The camera slowly zooms in on Central Park, the morning light filtering through the tall oak trees, casting shadows on the peaceful ground. Amidst the soft chirping of birds and the distant laughter of children, Sarah Mitchell sits quietly on her favorite bench. The serenity is almost tangible, until we focus on her loyal German Shepherd guide dog, Bud. With every calm breath Sarah takes, Bud remains on alert, his ears twitching, sensing something amiss. 5 years ago, a car accident stole Sarah's sight, but it didn't take away her strength. With Bud by her side, she's regained her independence and trust in the world. But today, that peaceful world is about to shatter. Across the park, Hank McCoy, the kind of guy who draws attention without trying, notices Sarah sitting there. His smirk grows as he eyes her and her dog. "Look at that," Hank sneers to his friends. "A princess with her perfect little dog." He flicks his cigarette to the ground, pushing off from his bike, swaggering towards Sarah and Bud. As Hank moves closer, Bud's muscles tense, a low growl rumbling from his chest. Sarah feels the subtle change, her fingers gripping the leash as her heart races. But she remains calm, ready to protect the dog that's always protected her. But Hank doesn't back off. No, he's just getting started. The tension in the air thickens as Hank, now accompanied by his leather-clad friends, approaches Sarah and Bud. His footsteps are deliberate, taunting. The group's laughter echoes through the park, cutting through the calm like a knife. "Hey, nice dog you've got there," Hank mocks. "Does he do tricks? Maybe he can roll over for us or jump through hoops." Sarah, unable to see, senses the change in Bud. His usual calm demeanor shifts, his body stiffens. Her grip on the leash tightens. She can feel the tension rising, like a storm brewing between them. "Leave us alone," she says, her voice firm, though a tremor betrays her nerves. He's not just a dog, but Hank, fueled by his bravado, doesn't stop. He claps his hands loudly, mocking Bud further, as his friends snicker behind him. Sarah can hear the malice in his voice, the challenge. "Come on, tough guy," Hank sneers, stepping closer, his boots heavy on the pavement. "Let's see what you've got." Bud growls louder, his stance widening, his muscles tensing like a coiled spring. He's no ordinary dog, he's a protector, and this man is an immediate threat. Sarah's heart races as she feels the intensity in the air. "Don't you dare," she warns, her voice trembling but determined. But Hank is too far gone. His mockery turns into reckless arrogance as he raises his foot, aiming it at Bud. The park seems to hold its breath. The sound of Hank's boot cutting through the air is deafening. And then, in the blink of an eye, Bud springs into action, moving with a speed that stuns everyone watching. The atmosphere crackles with anticipation as Bud positions himself between Sarah and Hank, his teeth bared, his eyes locked onto the threat. The crowd around them falls silent, unsure of what will happen next, as Hank stumbles back, caught off guard. The situation has escalated, and Hank's once confident smirk begins to fade. As Hank's foot moves to strike, the energy in the park shifts. What was once a tense but manageable situation now escalates into something much more serious. Bud's instincts, honed over years of military service, kick in without hesitation. In a fluid motion, the German Shepherd sidesteps Hank's kick, his movements precise, swift, and far beyond what anyone could have predicted. With a deep, guttural growl, Bud places himself squarely between Sarah and the aggressor, his body coiled with tension, his eyes locked onto Hank. The sheer intensity of Bud's presence is overwhelming. He's no longer just a guide dog, he's a warrior, a protector. The crowd, once uncertain, now watches in stunned silence, their phones recording the confrontation. Hank falters, his cocky swagger faltering as he registers the force of the situation. His bravado dissolves, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. "What the hell is this dog's problem?" he mutters, his voice trembling for the first time. The laughter of his friends is gone, replaced by a tense quiet that fills the park. Sarah, gripping the leash tightly, feels the subtle vibrations in Bud's stance. She knows something has changed. Bud is no longer simply defending her from Hank's words. He's preparing to protect her from him. The air is thick with tension. Sarah's heart pounds in her chest, and she calls out again, her voice shaky but firm, "Leave us alone. He's not just a dog. He'll defend himself." But Hank, still reeling from the unexpected shift, doesn't back down immediately. Instead, he attempts to regain control, attempting to dismiss the seriousness of the situation. "Relax, it's just a dog," he sneers, his voice losing its earlier confidence. But the crowd isn't so sure anymore. A woman speaks up nervously, "Someone should stop him." And then, just as Hank attempts another step closer, a park ranger pushes through the crowd, his authority cutting through the chaos. "What's going on here?" the ranger demands, his voice sharp and commanding. Hank freezes. The weight of the crowd's judgment and the ranger's firm gaze forces him to take a step back, his cocky attitude crumbling. "You've got a problem with my dog?" The ranger continues, his eyes piercing through Hank's tough exterior. "You're threatening a guide dog. That's not just reckless, it's illegal." The ranger's words land with a heavy thud. The murmurs from the crowd grow louder, phones zooming in as they capture every moment. Hank, now visibly deflated, tries to backpedal, raising his hands in an attempt to downplay his actions. "It's just a joke. I didn't mean anything by it," he mutters. But it's too late. Bud remains firmly planted between Sarah and Hank, his eyes unblinking, his growl low and constant. He's ready, not just for a confrontation, but to ensure Sarah's safety no matter what. The park ranger steps closer to Hank, his voice filled with authority. "You're lucky this dog showed restraint," he says. Hank, deflated and broken, stumbles back, realizing that his bravado has been shattered. He mutters under his breath, a barely audible, "I didn't know." The ranger doesn't let up. "Ignorance doesn't excuse your actions," he says sternly, ensuring Hank knows the full weight of his mistake. The crowd, once unsure, now starts to disperse, many shaking their heads at Hank's behavior. The park is still, almost as if holding its breath, when an older man, a retired military veteran, steps forward. His weathered face and worn military cap command respect, and his voice, though calm, carries the weight of years spent serving. "That's no ordinary dog," he says, pointing directly at Bud. "I know that stance anywhere. That's a K9. The crowd goes silent, the murmur of whispers growing louder as the revelation sinks in. Sarah, who has always known Bud as her guide dog, feels a rush of confusion and awe. Her heart skips a beat as she slowly turns toward the man, processing his words. "He's not just a guide dog," the man continues, his gaze fixed on Bud. "That dog served in combat. He was trained for high-risk missions, protecting soldiers, taking down threats. If he's reacting like this, it's because he sees that man as a danger." The truth hits Sarah like a tidal wave. She kneels beside Bud, her fingers trembling as they brush through his fur, feeling his strength and steadiness under her touch. "Bud," she whispers, her voice quivering, "you've been through so much, haven't you?" The crowd watches, rapt, as the tension that had once surrounded Bud shifts into something deeper. A respect for the dog grows, transforming the way they see him. What was once just a loyal companion is now recognized as a warrior, a soldier, who had faced and survived battles far more intense than anyone could have imagined. Hank stands frozen, his cocky demeanor gone, replaced by a look of disbelief. His eyes flicker back and forth between Sarah, Bud, and the older man as the weight of the situation presses down on him. He takes a step back, his bravado evaporating. "I didn't know," he mutters, his voice small. The park ranger, still standing firmly between Sarah and Hank, uses the moment to further emphasize the seriousness of the situation. "This dog isn't just here to help guide," he says, his voice steady but filled with authority. "He's trained to protect, and he's earned every ounce of respect. Threatening him, especially knowing his history, is a criminal act." Hank's shoulders slump as the ranger's words hit him. His defiance crumbles, and the crowd watches in silence as he retreats, completely defeated. "I'm sorry," he mutters, but the apology feels hollow, a mere shadow of the damage done. As Hank walks away, the park regains its quiet, but the atmosphere has changed. The crowd slowly disperses, murmuring to one another, their opinions of Sarah's guide dog irrevocably altered. But Sarah remains, sitting on the bench with Bud by her side, her heart full of newfound understanding. She reaches down and gently strokes Bud's fur, her voice soft but filled with gratitude. "You've always been my protector, but now I know just how much more you are," she murmurs. The bond between them deepens, and Sarah realizes that what she had once taken for granted was a treasure beyond words. A warrior, a survivor, and above all, her unwavering companion. As the crowd fades and the tension leaves the air, Sarah and Bud remain a quiet force, side by side, ready for whatever challenges the future may bring, knowing that their bond is now unbreakable. Sarah sits in her small apartment, the hum of the city outside blending with the quiet within. The events from the park keep replaying in her mind, each moment more surreal than the last. The truth about Bud's past, the fact that he had been a military K-9, trained for high-risk combat missions, has changed everything. She gently strokes his fur, still processing the weight of what she's learned. She's always known Bud as her loyal companion, guiding her through the world, but now she's starting to understand the depth of his loyalty. This wasn't just a dog who had been trained to lead the blind. No, Bud had been a warrior, a soldier who had fought in battles far different from anything she could comprehend. Sarah feels a deep sense of gratitude, mixed with awe, for the life that Bud had led before he became her guide. Her thoughts drift to his military service, to the years of combat, the risks he'd taken, and the lives he'd saved. She wonders if he had ever longed for that life. The adrenaline, the purpose, or had it been the only thing he'd known, leaving a void once it was over? Sarah shudders at the thought, realizing just how much she still doesn't know about Bud, even though she's depended on him for so long. Determined to understand more, Sarah picks up the phone and dials a number she's found through her research. She reaches a woman at a veterans organization and explains what happened in the park, how Bud's behavior had revealed a side of him she hadn't known existed. The woman on the other end listens intently, asking for more details about Bud's background. After a few moments of silence, the woman speaks again, this time with a tone of recognition. "I found some information," she says. "Your dog's military ID matches a retired K-9 named Bravo. He served overseas with a handler named Sergeant Jake Carter. They were deployed on multiple missions before Bravo retired. It sounds like he's had quite a life." Sarah's heart skips a beat. Bravo. The name echoes in her mind, and she repeats it softly, almost in disbelief. "Bravo," she whispers. "That was his name." The woman continues, "Sergeant Carter retired a few years ago and now lives in Montana. If you'd like, I can provide his contact information. He may be able to tell you more about Bravo's service." Sarah feels a wave of emotion wash over her. Bravo. She never imagined that her guide dog, the one she had trusted with her life for years, had such a past. A past filled with sacrifice, loyalty, and bravery. She writes down the details, her hands trembling as she absorbs the gravity of what she's just learned. As the call ends, Sarah's thoughts are a whirlwind. She looks down at Bud, who lies beside her, calm and steady, as always. But now, she sees him in a new light. A hero, a warrior, whose story she still doesn't fully understand. In the days that follow, Sarah can't stop thinking about Bravo's past and what it means for their future together. She realizes that everything she's learned about Bud, his training, his instincts, his protective nature, has only deepened her connection to him. He's not just a guide dog, but a partner who has faced more than most people could ever imagine. With this newfound understanding, Sarah knows that she needs to learn more about Bravo's history, to honor the life he had before coming to her. And so, she makes another call to the Veterans Organization, this time to get in touch with Sergeant Jake Carter. She's nervous but determined, knowing that this is the key to understanding Bud's full story. The bond between them grows even stronger as Sarah reflects on everything Bud has given her, not just in guiding her through the world, but in the silent strength and resilience he carries with him. As she prepares to uncover more of his past, she knows one thing for certain. She will continue to walk alongside him, honoring the soldier he was and the guide dog he is today. The Central Park was Sarah Mitchell's sanctuary. She often sat on the same worn bench under the shade of tall oak trees, her face turned toward the breeze, listening to the symphony of birds and the distant laughter of children. Her hand gripped the leather leash of Bud, her loyal German Shepherd guide dog. Bud was more than just a companion. He was her protector, her eyes, and her lifeline after the car accident that had stolen her sight 5 years ago. Despite the calm surroundings, Bud seemed restless, his ears twitching at every sound, his sharp eyes scanning the park as if anticipating trouble. Across the park, Hank McCoy leaned against his motorcycle, surrounded by a group of leather-clad bikers. With his bulky frame, shaved head, and tattoos, Hank had a presence that demanded attention. He noticed Sarah sitting quietly with Bud at her side. Something about her peaceful demeanor paired with the dog's disciplined posture rubbed him the wrong way. Flicking his cigarette to the ground, Hank smirked. "Look at that, a princess with her perfect little dog," he sneered, stepping away from his bike as his friends chuckled behind him. Hank's heavy boots thudded against the pavement as he crossed the park, heading straight for Sarah. Bud noticed him first. The dog's ears perked up, his body stiffening as a low growl rumbled from his chest. Sarah could feel the tension in the leash and tilted her head toward the sound of the approaching footsteps. "Hey there," Hank said mockingly, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Nice dog you've got. Does he do tricks? Maybe he can jump through hoops or roll over for us." Sarah tightened her grip on Bud's leash, her heartbeat quickening. She couldn't see the man, but she could hear the malice in his voice. "Leave us alone," she said firmly, her tone masking the fear bubbling inside her. But Hank didn't back off. Instead, he clapped his hands loudly, trying to provoke Bud. The dog remained steady, his piercing gaze locked on Hank, though his growl deepened. "Oh, tough guy, huh?" Hank taunted, taking another step closer. By now, a few passers-by had paused to watch the unfolding scene, but no one dared to intervene. Sensing the attention, Hank decided to up the ante. He raised his foot as if to kick Bud. The park's atmosphere turned electric, the air charged with tension. Sarah's fingers tightened around Bud's leash, her knuckles turning white. She couldn't see, but she could feel the shift in the air. Bud's growls erupted into a deep, guttural warning. Hank laughed, his confidence still high. "Come on, mutt, show me what you've got," he sneered, his foot still raised. But as soon as Hank's foot moved closer, Bud's instincts kicked in. The German Shepherd sidestepped the kick with lightning speed, planting himself between Sarah and Hank. His sharp teeth were bared, and his eyes locked on the man with an intensity that sent a chill through the crowd. The park fell silent. The tension was palpable as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Hank was startled. His bravado faded, replaced by unease. "What the hell is this dog's problem?" he muttered, his voice no longer mocking, but uncertain. As the crowd murmured, phones capturing every second, a park ranger pushed through, his voice firm. "What's going on here?" he demanded. Hank froze, his bravado evaporating completely. Bud remained in position, unmoving, his body language clear. If Hank tried anything again, the outcome wouldn't be in his favor. Sarah exhaled shakily, feeling the tension in Bud's leash relax slightly. But she knew the danger wasn't over yet. Hank took a cautious step back, raising his hands slightly, trying to downplay his actions. "Relax, I was just messing around," he muttered, though his voice lacked the confidence it had moments before. The park ranger crossed his arms, his expression stern. "You call threatening a guide dog messing around? That's not just reckless, it's illegal." Sarah clung to Bud's leash, still trembling, as the ranger stood between them, his words cutting through Hank's arrogance. This dog is doing his job, protecting her. And by the looks of it, he's better at his job than you are at being a decent human being. Hank's smirk faded entirely. His shoulders slumped, and he took another step back, clearly defeated. An older man, wearing a worn military cap, stepped forward. His voice, calm and sure, cut through the murmurs of the crowd. "That's no ordinary dog," he said, pointing directly at Bud. "I know that stance anywhere. That's a K9. The crowd gasped, and Hank looked taken aback. Sarah's brow furrowed in confusion as she turned toward the man. "What do you mean?" "He's my guide dog," she said softly. The man stepped closer, nodding slowly. "He might be your guide dog now, ma'am, but I'd bet money he served before that. That focus, that bark, it's instinct. The kind only a trained military dog has." The revelation hit Sarah like a wave. She crouched beside Bud, her fingers brushing through his thick fur as if seeing him in a new light. "Bud," she whispered, her voice trembling with awe and disbelief. She had always known Bud was exceptional, but she never imagined his past carried such weight. The older man continued, his voice steady but filled with respect. "Dogs like him are heroes. They're trained for combat zones to protect soldiers and take down threats. If he's reacting like this, it's because he sees that man as a danger." Sarah exhaled, her heart pounding. She never expected this truth about Bud. The moment felt surreal as she stroked his fur, her mind racing with new understanding. Hank, on the other hand, was visibly shaken. His bravado was gone, and he muttered, "I didn't know." The ranger stepped closer to Hank, his tone unyielding. "Ignorance doesn't excuse your actions. You're lucky this dog showed restraint." Finally, Hank took one last step back. His shoulders slumped as he muttered, all right, I didn't mean any harm." The park ranger, not buying his apology, ordered Hank to leave. As Hank retreated, Sarah remained seated on the bench, her fingers still gently resting on Bud's fur. Sarah sat there in silence, processing the shock of the day. She had always trusted Bud, but now she understood that his loyalty and bravery went far beyond what she could have ever imagined. For the first time, Sarah realized just how much she owed Bud. Not just for guiding her through life, but for protecting her in ways she had never known. If you enjoyed this heartfelt story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more amazing tales. Your support keeps us going.